So we'll have some remarks in just a moment, but first I want to make sure that we begin tonight's event with remarks from our Mayor Joe Hogsett. So I'd like to introduce him to come up right now.
Well, good afternoon. Sorry I'm running a little late today, but I'm glad to see so many of you out on an important afternoon. I first want to thank Melody, who I said hello to coming in, and Aaliyah for helping the city's Office of Sustainability put together this afternoon's event. But most importantly, thank you all for being here. I see State Representative Moed there. When I took office 3 months ago, I promised an administration that was transparent, was responsive, and inclusive of all residents and stakeholders. And in the most recent case of the Covanta contract, I am proud to say that a page has been turned, and I couldn't be happier to be here with all of you today to talk about how we write the next chapter in our city's story. The passion, the knowledge, the experience that is present in this room as I look around and recognize so many familiar faces, well, all of that passion and knowledge and experience is what I might call our city's most valuable renewable resource. But only if we as a city continue to provide venues to cultivate the energy that exists in this room this afternoon and direct it toward the more complicated decisions, the more complex decisions about how we move forward as one city. Put another way, I am more confident than ever, despite the bags under my eyes, I am more confident than ever that there isn't a single problem facing Indianapolis that cannot be solved by the talent that we have in this room today and that exists throughout this great city. And as it relates to the future of recycling, that discussion begins anew today in this room with all of you together at the helm. As for my role, I'm here today to listen, not to talk, except for right now. Listen, but not talk, something that my dear friends, Carrie Hamilton and Jesse Carabanda, will tell you may be the most remarkable part of this entire forum. But before I summarize and listen, before our conversation about the future begins, I do want to make one thing clear. I pledge to each and every one of you that although we may not all agree at this very moment on the final destination, the journey we embark upon today will, from start to finish, be transparent, be responsive, and it will be inclusive of all residents and stakeholders in this city. In my opinion, that is what you deserve. And in return, I ask just a few things. Give our city your ideas. Give our city your passion. Give our city your invention, your innovative capacities, and your creativity. And if you do that, I promise you, in fact, I guarantee you, that your efforts will serve as an indelible legacy to this moment in time. And together, we will be giving our city a brighter, a smarter, a cleaner, a greener, and a more sustainable future. I thank you.
Thanks, Mayor. Just to introduce myself, my name is Jeff Bennett. I am the Deputy Mayor of Community Development, and it is my pleasure to be able to sort of serve as the MC for tonight's event. I am by no means an expert on recycling, but I do know that we have, if not a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, it's certainly a once-in-a-generation opportunity to design a program from scratch, to think big without being constrained by budgets and politics and the stuff that bogs us down every day. But to really think about what are the best practices that are out there, what are other cities doing, and how are they funding recycling programs in their communities? How do we move from 10% participation and aspire to 100% participation? And so I'm anxious, just as a citizen and as a newbie to the issue, to hear from those folks who are far more expert than me. This is the first step in determining what recycling solutions are truly best for our diverse and unique neighborhoods. As the mayor said, this process will be collaborative, it will be inclusive, and it will be transparent. And those are all so vitally important as we make policy that affects all of our neighborhoods. We will learn from local leaders, from multiple levels of government, from both sides of the aisle, from community groups that represent a variety of interests, and from residents all over the city, and we hope to hear from many of you tonight and then over the course of the next several weeks and months as we move forward. Let's not limit ourselves today. Let's not get bogged down in what limits us in terms of budget. Let's think about what we can do and what is possible. So let's kick off by hearing from a couple of our elected leaders. First, State Representative Justin Moed, who since 2013 has represented House District 97, much of the south side of Indianapolis. You all know him as a leader on so many issues that affect our quality of life in neighborhoods, and we'd like to hear from him on this issue right now.
Thank you, Jeff. And I think we ought to give a round of applause to Mayor Hogsett, because how refreshing is it to hear him welcome our input on an issue so important to our city. So how about a round of applause for Mayor Hogsett? Thank you all also for being here. And as Jeff alluded to, I represent House District 97, which is downtown Indianapolis, the near south side and west side of the city. And as I've gone door to door over the last few years, the issue of air quality, water quality, sustainability continue to come up as a concern among residents because of the manufacturing that's built around the southwest side of the city. And because of that, I think that there is more and more of an appetite to try and tackle big issues like this. And because of that, you're seeing our mayor reach out and want to get input on an issue like this. I serve in the state legislature, where unfortunately, we're not really producing a lot of progressive-minded policies over the last few years. So that might be an understatement. So it's difficult. It's a difficult environment for legislators to work in, but I think that a big part of moving that needle on issues like this is going to come from leadership in our cities, across our state, and it's going to take people like you coming together in neighborhoods, in community groups, to come and impress upon your elected officials at the local level to really begin to move programs forward on issues like this. And I think right now we have a clean slate, we have a new administration, and I think it's exciting that you guys are all here, and I'm really happy you're here, so thank you.
Thank you, Representative Moed. Next, we would like to hear from City Councilor Jeff Miller, who has just begun his second term on the council, representing much of the south side and a portion of downtown Indianapolis, and he's been a leader as well. It's interesting that we're here in the intersection of Representative Moed and Councilor Miller's districts. Maybe that's done on purpose because these two guys have worked together on so many issues, including this one.
Yeah, I really do enjoy working with Justin. I want to make that clear. It is so much fun and so refreshing to have somebody at the State House who will sit down and talk about neighborhood issues. I love it. And he's rubbing off on others. Again, as was earlier said, big thanks to Mayor Hogsett for putting a pause on the Covanta situation. You know, recycling trash isn't a terrible idea. It's not even a bad idea, but it's not a progressive idea. It's not the best idea. That's a fallback plan. Once we have a better plan. We're better than that as a city. So I really thank him for being willing to do that and to do this event today. I had someone from the Indy Star ask me, well, what's going to be different this time around? My answer was simple, this. We didn't do this before. Anytime elected officials and government makes a decision without asking the public their opinion, it's not going to be the best decision. I'm sorry, it's not. It may be a bad decision, it may be a lukewarm decision, but it's not going to be the best decision. So thank you all for coming out. I'm so excited to see all these people here for this. One thing I want to throw out, though, as we consider what to do next, don't focus just on the mechanism for recycling. That's important. It's very important. It may be as simple as giving everybody a second trash container that's blue instead of gray. It may be more complex. But we can't focus just on that. We need to also focus on the motivation. We need to help instill in this city why recycling is important, why sustainability is important, or we're not going to move this needle forward. It is true we only have 10% of the people recycling at their curbside, but I'm one of those that's not at 10% because I go and recycle at the grocery store. So I really do think we have a lot more recycling than we realize, but we're not going to get to the levels we want if we don't instill that value. You know, Justin and I walk neighborhoods sometimes doing the neighborhood cleanups. We're in the Great Indy Cleanup Month right now. And there's times when we've been in an alleyway and we've seen trash strewn all over a yard where somebody lives, and the trash the dumpster is sitting on its side and the trash is sitting on top of it. Well, if we give that person a second bin without instilling value in them of recycling, then we're going to have two bins sitting on the ground with trash sitting on top of them. So I want to leave you with just a thought, something that motivated me as a young kid to care about the environment. It was a book, well, it wasn't Mayor Hudnut's toss. I loved that. It was great, the Hudnut toss. It wasn't the Crying Indian. Do you guys remember the Crying Indian, many of you? I'm dating myself, aren't I? The younger folks are going, what, Crying Indian? It was awesome, but that just made me cry. What motivated me was a book called Pop Can Park. It's a simple, simple message. Kid in a park with his parents said, Dad, is it okay if I throw my can on the ground? It's only one can. It doesn't really matter, does it? And the dad said, you know what? If everybody has that attitude, we have a pop can park. And I went, wow, I get that. That's so simple, but I get it. So I would carry my trash with me until I found a trash container. And then when I learned about recycling, I'm obsessive. I will carry my plastic cup in my pocket until I can find a recycle bin, or I'll take it home until I can recycle it at home. It instilled that in me for years. That's what we need to look at, is how do we educate, how do we motivate people to move beyond throwing stuff away and instead making a sustainable city. We can do that. We can be a great city, and it starts here today. Thank you all.
Thank you again, Representative Moed, Councilor Miller. This is the portion of the program where we've asked for some specific groups to give a little bit longer presentations with sort of the local, state, national perspectives on recycling and what possibilities are out there. So first to go is the Indiana Recycling Coalition, and Carrie Hamilton is the executive director. She'll be speaking on behalf of IRC. The mission of the Indiana Recycling Coalition is to support source reduction, reuse, composting, and recycling activities in Indiana. The goal is to conserve natural resources, reduce energy use, encourage environmental responsibility, and create green jobs through recycling. And so once again, I'd like to introduce Carrie Hamilton to give those remarks on behalf of IRC.
Thank you so much, Jeff. It is truly a pleasure to be here and very, very exciting. I'm just going to jump right in here. I don't have a flipper, so Aaliyah has kindly said she will Next slide, please. Yay! I'm going to say it again. Thank you, Mayor Hogsett. Where are you? Where's the mayor? All right, he stepped out for a second. Someone tell him. Thank you, Mayor Hogsett. Let's just, another round. If it weren't for his leadership, we wouldn't be here today. So I'm going to talk just very quickly about our organization, why recycling is important, to give that message that Jeff, Councilor Miller, just mentioned. We've got to remind folks why it's important to do this, and then some thoughts about moving forward. Next slide. We're a statewide coalition. We've been around for more than 25 years. We deliver education and advocacy and programs and projects. We are a true coalition. We're a diverse membership of business and industry, local and state governments, universities, nonprofits, individuals, students, and other organizations. Next slide. We're also, at the bottom of that slide, it mentioned that we, in 2014, were honored to receive an award as the best state recycling organization in the country from our national affiliate, the National Recycling Coalition. That was very exciting. So here are just a few of the programs we manage across the state to give you a sense of what we do. The Student Recycling Leadership Corps is a scholarship program where we're engaging students across Indiana in recycling projects in exchange for a college scholarship. We have an annual conference where 250 folks or so from around the state and around the country come to learn best practices and share ideas and advance recycling in our state. Sneak peek, next week, early next week, we are launching the Indiana Food Scrap Initiative. Stay tuned for that. We are also partnering for the first time this year with the Motor Speedway on a pilot project at the race this year, and we're in our second year of working with the 500 Festival on recycling and banana composting at the mini marathon. Next slide. That's just a sample of the work we do, so you have a sense of it. So, why is recycling important? Conservation. Next slide. I've got a couple of these quick slides, so you'll get used to it. Conservation is the piece that's really most intuitive to all of us. And if you look at the right here, when we recycle these items, we don't need to do as much of the left. We don't need to mine and harvest raw resources. When we're taking these materials right out of our own community, processing them, and turning back into new products and packaging right here in Indiana and the Midwest. Next slide. And to give a sense of what that translates to in the United States, roughly $11.5 billion worth of packaged material that's recyclable gets disposed of in the United States today. There's a huge opportunity to do good for our economy and our environment. All right. So, for our manufacturers, the big benefit of recycling is energy savings. If you're a plastic manufacturer, you save 85% of the energy it takes to make a product out of recycled material versus raw material. Steel is 74%, paper 64%, glass 25%, aluminum 95% energy savings when they use recycled versus raw material. This is truly a bottom line issue for these manufacturers. And this translates into huge carbon savings in our economy. According to the US EPA, 42% of carbon emissions come from the life cycle of stuff, from raw resource extraction to end of life. That's a huge part of the carbon emissions in our economy. And EPA also demonstrated that waste reduction, reuse, composting, and recycling are extremely effective and cost-effective ways to reduce carbon emissions. So it's low-hanging fruit. If you're concerned about your carbon footprint, recycling is one of the easiest ways you can reduce it. Okay, jobs. So we were really excited a couple of years ago to work with the Bowen Center at Ball State to analyze the job creation potential of recycling in Indiana. And the baseline of that information was looking at what we're disposing of today. We dispose about 6 million tons of material in Indiana every year. 92%, the vast majority of which is recoverable in some way. And you can see 66% is basic recyclable commodities, nearly 17% is compostable, other recoverables such as textiles and construction and demolition debris make up, again, that vast majority. So here's the soundbite from the job study. If we were to increase recycling in Indiana 25%, and that's a very, very doable number, we would create 10,000 new collection, sorting, transporting, and processing jobs across Indiana. That's just the jobs to get the material ready to sell on the market to Indiana's manufacturers. Next slide. And think about those jobs. What are we talking about? We're talking about replacing far away, dirty, extractive industry jobs with, next slide, clean, green, local jobs. This is an economic transformation, a sustainable green economy transformation waiting to happen if we do a better job with recycling. Next slide. So here's the demand for material. We all know that Indiana's a manufacturing state, right? So it turns out we have 77, and actually we know this number's a little higher, but at least 77 manufacturers in Indiana that rely on recycled feedstock. These are glass, paper, plastic, aluminum manufacturers, and they need our material. We know, I think everyone knows that we're a big steel and aluminum manufacturing state. I can tell you that plastics is a growing sector in Indiana, but I want to highlight paper and glass. Last week in Valparaiso, Indiana, a paper mill opened up. It was the first new paper mill in decades in the United States. A $300 million facility, and what is their feedstock? 100% recycled paper. They are so excited about the city of Indianapolis talking about moving forward with recycling because they could use every single ounce of paper and fiber and cardboard and cereal boxes that we generate in our community right here in Indiana. Glass. And we have many other paper mills and paper manufacturers in Indiana that use recycled feedstock, just to note that. On the glass front, who knows where Ball glass jars come from? Indiana, right? That factory in Muncie that we think of as the original Ball glass jar factory is still up and running, still pumping out glass jars and beer bottles right here in Indiana. And there are several other of those glass manufacturers, primarily in East Central Indiana, and fiberglass insulation companies that want recycled glass as well to make their new fiberglass products. They could use every single ounce of glass that we generate in our community today. Next slide. So what do we need to do? We need to get the good quality material that they need, that they want to buy, to those manufacturers. Next slide. And it's pretty straightforward. Kind of the baseline of what we hope to accomplish here in Indianapolis is to start with really robust community collection infrastructure, curbside collection, and robust drop-off programs for folks in multifamily housing and small businesses, et cetera. And of course, and I think Councilor Miller mentioned this as well, public education. Not just why recycling is important, but how to participate in your neighborhood and your community and your home. Next slide. The opportunity, go ahead. So in Indianapolis for far too long, it's maybe been a little too difficult to recycle, right? We're gonna change that, right? Next slide. So what do we want for our city? Well, we know, go back. That's okay. Thank you for doing this. Recycling is one of the most visible ways a city can demonstrate its sustainability. It's one of the easiest ways for each of us to reduce our carbon footprint, and it's absolutely a jobs engine. We know that, so some of the things we want for our city, I've mentioned curbside recycling available to all single-family homes, more drop-offs, public education, and ultimately, we'd love to see a comprehensive, sustainable management plan for our city that includes a conversation about composting and more robust household hazardous waste collection, and I could go on and on, market development opportunities to create even more jobs in our community. There's a lot we can do in our city. We've got some groundwork to lay, and then we need to think big, right, Jeff? Okay, next slide. So just to think about what's in your household today and what we can put in the bin. Obviously, glass, aluminum, and other metals, all the different fiber products. I included a slide on cartons. There is now in the United States, including Indiana, robust collection infrastructure for milk cartons in schools, for your almond milk, for your, all of these new products that are packaged in cartons. So we want to include that in our Indianapolis program. And certainly plastics, our soda bottles, our milk jugs, our 1 through 7s, as much as we can. And I'll just mention, I think everyone knows that commodity prices have been low. You've heard about that, read about that. We can't worry about commodity prices when it comes to recycling programs. Commodities go up and down. That's just how it is. The folks that have been in the business for a long time that are in the room know that. They build their programs to weather those changes. Interesting fact, just today I saw in the industry news that HDPE, which is our milk jugs, those commodity prices have gone up 25% in the last 2 weeks. It changes dramatically. we can't worry about that. We have to do what's right for our overall economy and our environment and our community. Next slide. So this is exciting. There are some opportunities today to help Indianapolis move forward in a big and sustainable way from a cost perspective as well. There are some initial costs to starting up a program. We have to buy carts for households. The Recycling Partnership is a fairly new national program funded by companies such as Coke and Pepsi and other consumer goods companies that want to see increased recycling in our communities. They've already pledged $500,000 to Indianapolis to buy carts for households. They also are looking forward to coming at one of our future meetings to talk about some of the best practices and some of the best recycling cities in our country and what elements of those are making those programs work that we might want to consider bringing here to Indianapolis. Closed Loop Fund is another national program we might be able to tap into, and there have been state grant dollars available that we certainly would want to explore. So there are new resources available. We are truly uniquely positioned today in 2016 with all the momentum in our community and in our country to grow recycling, to jump forward, not just with a good recycling program, but with an awesome, excellent recycling program in our community. Go ahead. A couple of the benefits to think about and just to remind you of to creating a great program in our community, and this is kind of small, so I'll read all of them quickly. Attracting job creators and millennials. Some of you may have seen a letter from several business leaders thanking Mayor Hogsett when he made his announcement to move forward with this planning process. That was from folks who hire millennials and want to make sure we're moving in the right direction and attracting folks. Care for Creation, the faith community. They have a table here, the Indianapolis Green Congregations Group. Several faith leaders also thanked the mayor publicly for his decision to move forward with this process. Carbon mitigation, energy conservation, sustainable city credentials, supporting Indiana's manufacturers, job creation, including the opportunity to create re-entry job opportunities for ex-offenders in our community. Next slide. And I just love this. I think it's important to remember who's doing what, and this is just a few of the cities and towns in Indiana that are providing curbside for all of their residents. Speedway, Lawrence, Beech Grove, South Bend, Fishers, Fort Wayne, Lafayette, Ogden Dunes, Valpo, Evansville, Carmel, Zionsville, Borden, Indiana, Columbus, and many others. I think we need to get on this list, and not just be on the list, but be at the very top of the list with the best program in the state, and I'm pretty confident we're going to be able to do that. I think that's it. Thank you.
Carrie, that was great. Thank you. Next on the agenda is the Hoosier Environmental Council. HEC is devoted to identifying the biggest environmental challenges facing Indiana and uniting people toward a solution through education and advocacy. Their vision for Indiana's future is one of clean air, safe water, more protected land, and ultimately a healthier and higher quality of life. I'd like to welcome Executive Director Jesse Carbonda to give his remarks.
Thank you, Jeff and Melody and Aaliyah, for the invitation. Thank you, Mayor Hogsett, for your leadership for a new vision for recycling, which I think is emblematic of a new way of thinking that draws in the talents of more and more people of our city. And thank you to you all. What an impressive crowd. Really, really psyched about that. I've been asked by the city to really hone in my remarks on talking about the environmental implications of reconceptualization of recycling. And contrary to my normal approach, I do not have a PowerPoint. So it's very difficult, and I'm showing a lot of restraint here. I want to begin being super high level, which is that when we think about our city right now, and I've had a lot of opportunity to travel very locally over the last several weeks, you know, the issues that often come up are things like crime and unemployment and abandoned housing. And one might ask the legitimate question about where recycling fits into that broader framework. And part of the answer is that cities are capable of doing a lot at the same time, and so recycling certainly fits from that perspective. But how I want to end my brief remarks is to also talk about the fact that recycling matters from the perspective of innovation, the environment, and jobs. So those will be the three things I'll touch upon at the very end of my comments. But the bulk of the comments that I want to make are with respect to the issue of what would be the good design principles for a recycling program from the lens of an environmental organization as the Hoosier Environmental Council. First point is that the environmental footprint of business as usual, doing things as they are, is immense. We often think of recycling as about keeping materials and minerals and trees in the ground, but it is far more than that. Billion tons of waste. Oh, great. Thank you. Thank you. Much better. The production of 10 key metals, metal commodities, resulted in 3 billion tons of waste, which was 4 times the amount of actual minerals extracted. In other words, that the footprint caused by our extraction of materials is far more than the actual volume that we extract. A second interesting fact that kind of relays the potency of the environmental footprint of our current approach to production and consumption. Processing of materials account for half of US industrial toxic emissions. 5% of methane emissions, which as we are, or I should say 5% of all greenhouse gas emissions in the United States is attributed to landfills. And finally, about 30% of US energy consumption and manufacturing is attributed to just 4 commodities: paper, metals, plastic, and glass. The second point to make is that a reconceived program must authentically cover all the 3 R's, not just recycling, but reduction and reuse. To show the stakes of reducing waste first, consider that the average household in America gets nearly 850 pieces of junk mail per year. 850 pieces. If we avoided that, we'd save the equivalent, this is mind-blowing, of 9.3 million, the equivalent greenhouse gas emissions from 9.3 million cars per year. Therefore, as we think about a future Indianapolis recycling program, a huge component must be on reduction. Number 3, a recycling program ought to have a smart balance. What do I mean by that? It can't just be focused on the residential sector. It also has to be focused on scaling up the recycling that's happening in the commercial sector and in the industrial sector. And here's an interesting fact that kind of relays the industrial footprint and the imperative of why we need to make sure that recycling covers all sectors of the economy. 25,000 pounds per year per person in non-fuel minerals. In other words, to produce the way of life that we have in America, for every person in America per year, 25,000 pounds of non-fuel minerals are extracted each year. But at the same time as the scope of a recycling program needs to be broad in terms of residential, commercial, and industrial, we also need to be smart about how we do it. About 90% of the greenhouse gas benefits that come from recycling are attributed to just 3 different types of commodities: paper, cardboard, and metals. So while I do believe that this reincarnation of recycling in Indianapolis needs to be broad, again, in terms of residential, commercial, and industrial, we want to be smart about how we phase in the type of waste that gets recycled. Number 4, a reconceived program ought to have a stronger household hazardous waste program. So we've seen a lot of progress in our community with respect to reducing pollution into our waterways. We think about the significant upgrades to our sewer infrastructure system. We think about the ways in which we are trying to reduce nutrient pollution, which causes these blue-green algae problems all across the community. That's where we've seen progress when it comes to reducing pollution into our waterways. But there's another source that's called non-point source pollution that is very much tied to the reconceptualization of waste management and recycling in Indianapolis. And that is, a good program must facilitate the prevention of many household hazardous wastes from inadvertently getting into our waterways. Things like household cleaners, vehicle fluids, pool chemicals, pesticides, herbicides, glues, and oil-based paint from getting inadvertently dumped down a storm sewer or a sink. It turns out that part of this is the issue that this is, again, a very diffuse source of pollution. Part of it is we really don't know what kind of impact this actually has on our waterways. Of the 80,000 chemicals that are used in our country each year, only a couple hundred are ones that the federal government has adequately studied to determine how it might impact our water quality. So anything we can do to facilitate the collection of this type of household hazardous waste would be sound. Now you might ask, for a population of 850,000 people in Indianapolis, we must have, I don't know, maybe 500 locations for dropping out household hazardous waste. Or maybe it's 250. Or maybe it's 100. No, you know what it is? It's 4 for a city of 850,000. So that needs to be a high priority, to substantially scale up accessibility to household hazardous waste collection. And the fifth point, make the environmental footprint of a recycling company a consideration in the request for proposal process. So as we renegotiate contracts with the different recycling companies that are involved in administering recycling in different parts of our city, we want to make sure that we are not only making the criteria about cost, which of course is very important, as we want to be sensitive to keeping bills modest for people, but we want to also consider the environment. What do I mean by that? I mean it in both a local and the global sense. In the local sense, we wouldn't want to award a contract to a company necessarily that is fully driven by diesel trucks, because inadvertently we might actually be facilitating more local air pollution as a result of scaling up our recycling program. So that needs to be a consideration. Secondly, I think it ought to be in the broader vision of a city to be thinking about issues like climate change. So you want to award a company a contract, obviously on cost, on local environmental implications, but also on whether it is being a true steward of our environment in a holistic sense. Think about its broader commitment to sustainability. I'll wrap up here just by going back to those three vision perspectives with respect to recycling. Like I said, because we're going to face this challenge from a lot of our fellow citizens about where recycling fits in the array of different challenges that are facing our community. And I'll just raise these 3 points. One is innovation. Recycling is a very logistically heavy industry, and that lends itself to a tremendous amount of innovation on the part of IT professionals, on the part of supply chain professionals, and so forth. That's a lot of talent that could be injected into recycling beyond the great talent that's already in the recycling industry. So innovation is one reason why recycling matters to our city. Second, of course, is the environment. 18 million barrels of oil could have been saved if we recycled rather than discarded 2 million PET bottles in the United States last year. And finally, a point which Carrie is so wonderful in conveying in her different remarks to different audiences is jobs. In the United States alone, there are 56,000 companies that are in the recycling marketplace, a payroll of $37 billion per year, 1.1 million jobs in our country. This is a tremendous opportunity for our city and state, and we ought to take great advantage of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jesse. So 850 pieces of junk mail in a normal year. In an election year, that number goes up exponentially. Thank you again for your remarks. The Citizens Action Coalition works to initiate, facilitate, and coordinate citizen action directed to improving quality of life of all inhabitants of the state of Indiana. They do this through principled advocacy of public policies to preserve democracy, conserve natural resources, protect the environment, and provide affordable access to essential human services. Here to talk about affordability as it pertains to recycling is Mallory Holmes, Lindsay Ships, who are organizers for the Citizens Action Coalition.
My colleague Mallory will answer questions as well for you as you leave this evening. She'll be waiting in the back as well with me. But I'll be speaking with you solely this evening. Mayor Hogsett, Deputy Mayor Bennett, thank you. Members of the City County Council, State Representative Moed, all of you are distinguished leaders in this. That's why you're here. Members of the community as well. On behalf of Citizens Action Coalition and our 1,000 members in Marion County, my name is Lindsay Ships again, and I'd like to thank the city for the opportunity to speak with you this evening. As you may know, Citizens Action Coalition is a 501c4, not-for-profit. We were founded in 1974 by a group of civic organizations, churches, labor unions, senior groups. We saw the need for a grassroots organization dedicated to protecting consumers during the energy crisis. Since that time, CAC has expanded to a statewide organization with almost 40,000 members. We are dedicated to protecting utility ratepayers and advocating for affordable health care, but also, and above all, a clean environment. We do this through canvassing and lobbying, community organizing, and litigation, if need be. At CAC, we believe, like you, that Indianapolis is a world-class city. We believe that this world-class city of ours deserves a world-class recycling program. To achieve this, all stakeholders must be granted the reassurance that the development and procurement processes by which we craft our recycling program will be collaborative and transparent. We commend the efforts to begin that transparency tonight. As a matter of policy, we're not here to endorse one particular way to recycle. There are many types of comprehensive recycling initiatives that would suit this city and serve us well. Ultimately, the decision will rest with city leaders to determine what is most cost-effective and appropriate for our program that will serve the largest number of citizens. Above all, we recognize that there are existing agreements regarding the amount of trash we produce here in Indy. These agreements must not in any way disincentivize the city from taking part in a robust and meaningful program. It must be a truly sustainable program. In fact, decoupling the recycling program from any revenue or trash stream is critical to the success of Indy's future program, whatever it may look like. However, I will tell you, if you ask a CAC member what recycling means to them, they'll say that burning trash is not recycling. They'll say that a dirty materials recycling facility isn't sustainable. And we think anything worth doing is worth doing right. Our recycling should be accountable to us as taxpayers. It should be cost-effective and beneficial to the public, to the citizens that it serves. As consumer advocates, we are here to provide feedback. We're here to be part of the solution. And we're here to be part of the process and appreciative of the opportunity to speak with you this evening. I'll answer your questions, but I'll keep it mostly brief and end here and pass the mic along. Thank you all.
Thank you. It's my understanding that Greening Broad Ripple could not join us this evening. So, are they here? Oh, they are here. Hi. Sorry, I did not see you. So that's great. So Greening Broad Ripple seeks to enhance the community by promoting a healthy, productive, and fulfilling quality of life through community education and promotion of reduce, reuse, recycle practices. So here to speak on the recycling needs of one of our city's many unique neighborhoods is Morgan Bennett from Greening Broad Ripple. Thank you.
Okay, so I'll kind of keep this brief. My name is Morgan Bennett. I'm the Vice President of Green Broad Ripple. Thanks again to the mayor and everyone here for creating this initiative and getting everybody involved. This is a great process to be a part of. Recycling is at the heart of the mission of Green Broad Ripple. We really do have the reduce, reuse, recycle in our vision for a sustainable community. We've had a successful glass recycling program in Broad Ripple since 2009. We take about 10 tons of glass out of the village every month, which is amazing considering it's just a tiny little neighborhood in this vast city. So if you think about that little neighborhood and put it citywide, we could do some amazing things. Developing a citywide, clean, sustainable recycling program is very important to the future of our city. That I can't even say enough how great it is that we get this opportunity to be a part of that. Green Broad Ripple looks forward to working with the city and the citizens to see how we can make this a great, good recyclable city for the world-class city that we are. So in order to do that, we have to have a world-class sustainable recycling program, and it's the beginning to a lot of great things. So thank you.
Morgan, thank you. That's one of the things that I learned in having conversations with Carrie is about glass recycling, because it seems like such a no-brainer, such a low-hanging fruit, because we're always throwing away glass, so much glass, and to know that we have an opportunity to develop a program that incorporates a robust glass recycling component is huge. Now is the portion of the agenda where we want to open it up. So for the remainder of our time, we would like to hear from those of you who are representing groups, and then individuals maybe who pre-registered to speak before tonight's event. And we have a pretty long list. So I want to introduce our DPW panel of experts who will sit up here and they will take notes, and several of us throughout the room will be taking notes on your public comments. But please, please, please respect the fact that we have a pretty long list of people to speak. And so try to limit your remarks to a minute if you can, but certainly try not to go longer than a couple of minutes, because we would like to wrap up by 6 o'clock. So if you represent an organization and would like to speak, I would ask you to begin, I think, lining up at the microphone. And at the same time, I will introduce our 4 panelists from DPW. Tuan Nguyen, who is here representing Toxtrop and e-cycling. Kevin Newman, who represents solid waste. Craig Lutz, who represents Republic Services. And Jeff Meek, who's representing the Office of Sustainability. So if the 4 panelists would come up and then our speakers begin to line up, we'll get started with those individuals representing groups. And then after that, we will move on to individual comments. If you pre-registered, again, line up behind the mic, but we'll have a quick transition between the organizations and the individuals. So thank you in advance. I'm going to sit and watch the clock and take some notes.
My name is John Marquis. I'm part of Indianapolis Green Congregations. My background is construction engineer. And I've got a couple of questions. I helped rebuild all the incinerators at Belmont Wastewater Treatment Plant. So I'm wondering who's going to do the maintenance on this incinerator, who's going to do the refractory replacement, upgrades, changes of fuel type, and what will the condition be in 2028? Will we get anything back that's valuable? That's my first question. I'm not looking for an answer. I don't think you're going to give me one. Covanta will have the right to all the city's waste for its disposal, either in an incinerator or through the ARC facility. What are the grounds for determining where the ash goes in 2028? When the original incinerator was built, was about the time that I was working at the Belmont plant, and the thing that made it profitable for the incinerator was they dumped all the ash into Belmont, so we had to pay for the ash disposal. So I'm wondering, what are you going to do with that? In Long Beach and Los Angeles, Covanta generates energy from waste, and I'm wondering, will IP&L allow a similar arrangement? And what's the cost per kilowatt hour that we're going to be saving? I'd also like to ask, this is the last question, does the city have an estimate on how much recycling is done now? Now, I saw the 10%, but does that count curbside bins, city dumpsters, and the parking lots? Does it, you know, what all does it count? There's some bins that are limit to, like to paper, that's Antibby bins. You know, does the city have a tonnage that they can talk about? Thank you.
Excuse me. Does anyone want to try to answer the last question first in terms of the 10% figure and what that represents?
Sure. The 10% number is the participation rate in the curbside recycling program, specifically.
So it does not include Councilor Miller, who drops off his recycling at community recycling. So so that one we can answer. I'm not sure that the other three questions, although I wrote them down, are questions that we can give you a good answer to tonight. But certainly we can follow up.
Excuse me, I can jump in real quick. I'm with Republic Services, and I can give you the tonnage report that includes our curbside recycling plus the drop-off sites. In 2015, excuse me, the city, through the curbside collections that Republic collects, and as well as the drop-off sites, was right at 15,562 tons of recyclable material. So that's roughly about, you know, was it 30 million pounds of recycling just in those two programs. And again, that's just
that is correct. One of the things is that we have about 5.8% of residential waste gets converted as recyclables.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Lori Adelson, and I represent the Heartlands Sierra Club and the Hoosier Sierra Club. The Sierra Club is the oldest environmental group in the country. It was established in 1892. So we probably have the most hardcore environmentalists around, and there aren't zillions of us in Indianapolis, but there are plenty. And we love to be outdoors, we love to hike, we love to bike, we love to be in the waterways, and we love to get involved. And our motto is explore, enjoy, and protect. Well, protect is what this is about. And I am so thrilled that the Covanta mixed recycling, recycling, trash burning, whatever, is tabled, and that we are going to go forward with a transparent plan. We thank the mayor, we thank all of you for being so involved and for listening to the people. And we will be out there, and we will be teaching, and we will be hiking, and we will be spreading the word, because that's what's important. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name's Stephen Boggs, and I must tell you guys that the last time the city had meetings to take input on recycling, it was much different than this. There was a few people in a room with a few city employees taking comments, and people would suggest ideas like pay-as-you-throw. And city employees would actually tell us, people in the room, that that wouldn't work in Indianapolis. And this is so refreshing to have a meeting like this and begin this conversation. I worked for the Indiana Department of Environmental Management for many years here. And I provided technical assistance to cities on developing recycling programs. It was in the days when there was a grant program at the state for recycling and household hazardous waste. And I also worked with the city to help them develop the household hazardous waste program that exists here now. So, you know, I've had a few years in Indiana doing this. And believe it or not, because I've had a lot of people since over the years come to Indianapolis and says, why isn't there any recycling going on in Indiana? And you just have to go outside the city limits a little bit to find some good recycling programs, some excellent recycling programs. City of Bloomington has a pay-as-you-throw program. So today I'm representing Indianapolis Green congregations, the East Side Creation Care Network, and the Interfaith Power and Light. And we support integrated solid waste management as a comprehensive waste prevention, recycling, composting, and disposal program that prevents, recycles, and manages solid waste in ways that effectively protect human health and the environment. We support Indianapolis curbside recycling that is free to every household and that maximizes diversion of materials from disposal. The development of a material processing facility that maximizes the recovery of all recyclable materials. A recycling program that provides incentives to recycle, such as pay-as-you-throw or other incentives. A household hazardous waste program that is convenient and accessible for residents. A composting program that diverts organic and food waste from incineration. And an education program that informs the residents about available services and the 3 R's: reduce, reuse, and recycle. Personally, I would like to see a program that is managed locally, designed to serve the needs of Indianapolis neighborhoods, and provides employment for low-income residents. I believe such a program would be more likely to find acceptance and the needed support for it to succeed. I greatly appreciate this opportunity to comment, and I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you.
Hi, Jeff.
Hi, neighbor.
My name is Rosemary Spalding, and I am president of the Board of Directors of Earth Charter Indiana, and I'm speaking on behalf of Earth Charter and its many members throughout the state. First, I want to thank you for the opportunity to comment, and I want to explain a little bit that the Earth Charter is an international document that sets out principles for just, peaceful, and sustainable living throughout the world. And our mission with Earth Charter Indiana is to promote those principles in the state and regionally. And before commenting on recycling solutions, I want to note that Earth Charter Indiana commends Mayor Hogsett for putting a temporary stop to the planned Covana Advanced Recycling Center to hear from the community first and explore other options. And now that the Indiana Court of Appeals has essentially invalidated or nullified the contract that the city had entered into with Covana for this advanced recycling facility, we have a do-over. We have an excellent opportunity now to develop a new plan for recycling as part of any future contract with Covana. And beginning that process by seeking public input, I think demonstrates Mayor Hogsett's commitment to public participation and transparency in government, so we commend him. With respect to the issue of recycling, the Earth Charter expressly addresses that. Principle 7 says, adopt patterns of production, consumption, and reproduction that safeguard Earth's regenerative capacities, human rights, and community well-being. Reduce, reuse, and recycle the materials used in production and consumption systems and ensure that residual waste can be assimilated by ecological systems. The beauty of the Earth Charter is that it recognizes the interconnection between social justice, peace, the environment, and things like recycling and how we approach them in our communities. Consistent with the Earth Charter Indiana supports an integrated system of municipal solid waste management that first prevents waste from being generated to begin with. And I have to comment and say that we took a real step backwards this session of the legislature by the legislature enacting a bill that prohibits local governments from regulating or prohibiting the use of plastic bags. That's a true step backwards, and it's very disappointing because we're not preventing waste through that legislation. Second, we want to recycle everything that can possibly be recovered in the waste system before going to the final step, which is disposal. That should be our last resort. And I think we now have an opportunity to look at a system that will help us do that. With respect to the solutions, like some of the other speakers have said, we don't advocate a particular one, but they need to, whatever the solutions are, they need to comply with a few principles. Unfortunately, for the last 20-some years, our system has been upside down in terms of these principles. Not the reason, people ask, why don't people in Indianapolis recycle? Other people do. Well, the reason is because we've never been able to truly encourage it, because if we did encourage it, we paid hundreds of thousands of dollars in penalties because we weren't producing enough trash so that the incinerator could perform at a maximum efficiency. And that's why with this new contract, it was again backwards. The city would be penalized if it did anything to increase the volume of curbside recycling during the term of the contract. This contract that we currently have with Covanta, I believe expires in 2 years. And so one thing that's so important is that any new contract that we enter into not allow this disincentive to recycle by the imposition of penalties, monetary penalties on the city of Indianapolis. That's just not right, and it's counter to a program with integrity. In addition, I think that's a huge barrier because what's the alternative? We now have this incinerator. I think that's going to take some creativity, but I just urge, I think, Jeff, I think you said it, let's not look at barriers right now. Let's not consider cost, let's consider what's the right thing to do. And if the incinerator is inconsistent with what's the right thing to do, we need to figure out what an alternative to that is, or how they can be, how we can live together with both maximizing recycling and having incineration as our method of final disposal. Thank you very much, again, for the opportunity to comment.
Thanks, Rosemary. So are you still representing organizations, or? No, are we still an organization? Oh, okay. That's okay. You can stay right there because I think this may be the getting to the end of the organizational comments, and then we'll move into individuals. So go right ahead. Sorry.
Hi, my name is Denise Abdul-Rahman, and I represent the NAACP Indiana. I serve as the Environmental Climate Justice Chair, and I appreciate being invited to share comments on behalf of our organization. Our position is mostly that of air pollution and that of position of environmental justice to low-income and communities of color. Indiana right now is, Indianapolis has the one and only incinerator in the entire state. Fortunately, Logan Sport was able to stop having one built there. And there's only 80 incinerators across the nation. And incineration has started on its decline since 1990. Incineration is capital intensive. It's monopolistic as far as like long-term contracts. And it's in contrast to or in competition with recycling. So because in order to incinerate, you must have waste. Let's see. We subscribe to a zero waste concept, so we encourage the mayor to consider that. and I'm sorry, I'd like to thank the mayor and the administration for inviting us, if I didn't say that already. Incineration has high CO2 levels, and the current incineration company here employs about 74 people, according to our consultant, Energy Justice, Mike Ewall. And there are 3 forms of processing that the city or one can generally consider when it comes to recycling, and that's either incinerate, utilize landfills, or go with zero waste. We subscribe, based on our research, that the city consider going to landfills at this particular time, and then move rampantly toward recycling. To every 10,000 tons of waste, if you can get 60 jobs of durable reuse jobs per year, 25 manufacturing jobs per year, and recycling sorting types of jobs per year. The City of New York has a zero waste program to be incineration free and zero waste by 2030. We recommend that the city look at the City of New York. The amount of waste when you do recycling with no incineration can be reduced by 44%. Wealthy people produce more waste than low-income people. Just like utilizing energy, low-income people tend to use less energy. And then lastly, we subscribe to, someone mentioned pay and throw. There's a concept called save and throw. So we subscribe to the save and throw. We believe that low-income families will modify their behavior, and if you charge like per a bag, then, like I said, higher income families will pay more, and low-income families, out of necessity, will begin to recycle more rampantly. I think that concludes our comments. Thank you.
So let's transition to the individual comment portion, and if there are still organizations that would like to speak, just hop in line, and we'll just rotate back and forth as need be between individuals and organizations. So with the time we have remaining, please be respectful of what could be a long list of people who would still like to speak.
Okay, my name is Kent Moore, but you might refer to me later as Debbie Downer. I have been interested in recycling since 1981. So why doesn't Indianapolis recycle? Here's a little bit of a history lesson. In 1991, the solid waste district law was passed. That required every county in Indiana, with the exception of Marion, to either form its own solid waste district or become part of a regional amalgamation. Most of you probably know this. Why was Marion County not included? Number one, the waste to energy plant. And number two, Marion County has about 10 delegates to the House of Representatives, and we needed those votes. And by excluding Marion County, we got the bill passed. So a little bit of economics and a little bit of politics. Don't get me wrong, okay? I'm the kind of guy like Mr. Miller who hangs on to his recyclables. I even pick up recyclables from other people's and take them over to a workforce on an irregular basis. I've never made a dime from recycling, and I do all this stuff. So I'm a strong proponent of recycling. But we need to consider everything when we talk about recycling. One of the things that our environmental activists did not consider, while they considered all the resource extraction that was avoided and the other energy inputs from raw materials, they did nothing to address the major problem, the major obstacle to recycling, and that's logistics, that's transportation. Why are we still pulling stuff up? If it was made economic sense to recycle instead of mine, we'd be doing that. We wouldn't be standing here. We'd have industries knocking on the mayor's door saying, will you please start a recycling program? We really need your material. Buzzwords, sustainability. We all want a sustainable economy, but how do we achieve that? I think what we've been doing And it hasn't been a bad strategy for the last 20 years because we needed to do it. But I think now we're looking through the wrong end of the telescope. The major omission that I see here is that, with the exception of one person that I've talked to, I really don't see anybody from any of the industries that utilize these materials. We have to understand that when we start recycling, we're not just throwing it in a different bin. We're creating a feedstock for an industry. With steel, not hard. It gets up to, I don't know, 5,000 degrees Fahrenheit or something, and all the plastics and everything else that are in it burn off. With paper, not terribly hard. Grind it up, throw it in a bunch of water, run it through a screen, a lot of your contaminants get out. With plastic, whole different deal. They need it clean, they need it the right size, and it has to be an exceptional material. Again, transportation costs. So what I would like to see is the administration, is Mayor Hodgson still here? No. Is the administration encourage industries that will use these recyclable materials close to Indiana, thereby avoiding the transportation costs and raising the relative value of these feedstocks. I'll conclude my remarks there. Thank you.
Thanks. I appreciate that. And I think I would just refer back to what I think I understand from Carrie's presentation was that there is a robust community within Indiana that wants those materials.
Yes, what I should have said is they need to be taking the forefront. They need to be out there saying, we need these materials. This isn't just you throwing it away. You know, I'm Mr. Plastic Manufacturer, and you help me out with my feedstock costs, it'll be more jobs. One other point. Carrie said that we have the possibility of creating 10,000 jobs in Indiana through recycling. If we consider that $20,000 a year is a barely livable wage, and we do the math, we get 8 zeros, that's what, $200 billion in extra costs? Where's all this money going to come from? So unless we're intelligent and efficient about how we recycle, the costs are just going to blow out of the water, like they have been for the last 20 years. Now, thank you.
Thanks.
Hello, I'm Susan Gaw. I represent a nearby neighborhood, the Fountain Square Alliance. We're about 700 homes, I believe, in our neighborhood, and many of those homes are working class or lower income individuals. And I would really like to encourage the city to please educate our neighbors about the importance of this program, and please incentivize it, or at least make it free some kind of way for the low income people. If you want participation, it's going to have to incentivize the lower income people, and then you'll have massive participation, I believe. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hello. My name is Joanne Durbin. I have resided at the same address for the last 49 years in the Broad Ripple area. My husband and I currently participate in curbside recycling. We use the Toxdrop site on Lafayette Road, and we utilize the cardboard recycle bins at Broad Ripple Park. Our city could be a showcase for efficient and environmentally sound recycling if we plan to introduce and enforce recycling efforts that address not only the aesthetics and the physical costs, but include the health of the citizenry as an item when calculating savings. Landfills and incineration produce particulate matter in the air and taint groundwater. We want all of our citizens to be able to have clean air and water. We object to the Covanta plan because it didn't go far enough. If we base recycling solely on its profitability, markets for recycled materials would fluctuate accordingly, as we've talked about, and the handlers would be forced to dispose of unprofitable materials as the market demands. That's not acceptable, in that it would likely result in potentially profitable materials being dumped in landfills, incinerated as contaminated waste, or warehoused until markets made them profitable again. That would be a costly enterprise, to say nothing of a not in my backyard reaction from any neighbors who would be near those storage areas. The term of the contract is too long and should be evaluated every 3 years and appropriate changes made. Besides home recycling, there are 3 issues that should be considered in any recycling program. Public areas waste is first and foremost. As an active participant in KIBI programs for the past several years, including Adopt a Block, Great Indy Cleanup, which we're in the middle of now, and Make a Difference Day, I'm very aware of potentially recycled materials that don't get addressed other than through voluntary annual events. I routinely pick up trash from public waterway and medians in my neighborhood. Much of the trash is metal, paper, glass, and most particularly plastic, bags, cups, lids, and bottles. I wish we could ban plastic bags. Disposing of this stuff is challenging because of the volume of material would take 2 or 3 recycle cycles for me to be able to dispose of it with my bins. Last year, from the public waterway that runs through my neighborhood, I personally picked up 23 50-pound bags of trash. That was just me doing a little short section. Community members should be able to call the MAC line to schedule pickup of waste and or recyclable materials from public areas. Routinely have the ability to schedule a pickup, not just once a year. Solicit local business in the areas that have, especially fast food restaurants, that have bins available for waste disposal. Possibly an employee could be used to regularly police the area. Even if they only allow us to use their bins to dispose of stuff, they might get a tax credit for doing so. Pass legislation to enact deposit on cans and bottles similar to what we have seen in Michigan. Yard waste recycling is an ongoing issue in our neighborhood because of large lots, mature trees and shrubs, and most of all, invasive species removal. Currently, there's a scheduled window for pickup in the fall for leaves. I would propose a similar window in the spring when fallen tree limbs, windblown leaf litter, and seed pods are a challenge to responsible disposal. All this yard and tree waste can and should be recycled. And last of all, more tox drop sites, possibly in each of 8 locations and or more frequent dates. I drive almost 12 miles from my house to the Lafayette Road site and spend anywhere from 20 minutes to 45 minutes waiting in a long line of cars and trucks to drop off my tox drop stuff. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. I funded my baseball card collection with bottle deposits.
Hello, I'm Hannah Fleck. I'm representing the Indiana chapter of the U.S. Green Building Council. Couple of quick remarks. When we certified LEED buildings, that's leadership in energy and environmental design buildings, a prerequisite to certification is a recycling program for the building. Currently, it's very challenging for owners to, well, it's not very challenging, but it creates an additional challenge for owners to certify buildings. We can't take any credit for waste that is diverted and incinerated and, take that percentage that may or may not be recycled. I highly encourage any recycling program, hopefully that will be implemented in Indianapolis, to work with the commercial sector and also the construction waste sector as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, good evening. My name is Jessica Davis. I am the director of the IUPUI Office of Sustainability, but I am representing myself here tonight by also telling about some research that we have been conducting regarding recycling at IUPUI. Just so you are aware, IUPUI is home to nearly 30,000 students with 7,000 faculty, staff, and administrators. And with that many individuals, we're the size of a small city, or in some cases a fairly large city in Indianapolis. And we treat the campus as such from a sustainability standpoint. Of those 30,000 students, about 90% of them are from Indiana, and about 30% of them are from Indianapolis. So kind of keep these numbers in mind through this narrative here. When I joined the office in the summer of 2015, I was shocked to learn that IUPUI's recycle rate was 10%. In comparison to our sister urban serving universities, which are the universities that we benchmark ourselves against, IUPUI is dead last. The next second to last lowest university has a recycle rate of 25%, which is more than double our current performance. The vast majority of our counterparts have a recycle rate in the 40s, with the best performing campus being the University of Cincinnati at 65%. Now, a curbside recycling program may not directly impact IUPUI. We have our own infrastructure, we have our own operations team, we are contracted with a recycling company here in the state, and all of our recyclables are cleanly collected and diverted to a clean MRF in the city. However, the presence or not a presence of a curbside recycling program in Indianapolis has a huge behavioral implication on our students, faculty, and staff, something that our office has to deal with. So we're worried about the continuation of the status quo and what that means from IUPUI's perspective. For any of you who have walked across campus, you practically trip over recycle bins on our campus. We have them matched up with every trash can, they're properly labeled, properly colored, and of course there are some opportunities for improvement and we're continuing to work on that, but we are adequately providing recycling infrastructure for our campus community, and we're not seeing the performance that we want. So this causes us to look into other areas, behavior being one of them. And in implementing a citywide recycling program, I think that this is going to be far more challenging than the actual infrastructure itself. How are we educating people? How are we creating buy-in? And what are we doing to get them to participate? In the surveys that we've conducted, which we surveyed one entire building where we launched a new recycling program, I won't get into the details of it, we asked people what their perceptions of recycling were on campus, but then also asked them about at home. And I have 4 main results of the survey that I just wanted to share from the at-home component and not the on-campus component. Just over 30% of IUPUI staff do not recycle at home, and nearly all of them cited 2 reasons for the lack of participations. 1, I don't know what to recycle, and 2, I will not pay extra to recycle. Some even went so far to say it is not right for me to pay extra to recycle. Of those remaining 70% that claim to recycle at home, over half of them said that they either bring their recyclables to work, which we encourage, or they take them to a public recycling dumpster rather than pay for curbside recycling. And others who moved to Indianapolis from other locations also expressed their astonishment at Indy's lack of recycling infrastructure and support for citizens. Those surveyed were actually less knowledgeable about how to recycle at home than they were about how to recycle on campus, which tells me that we're doing something right, that they at least know something about how to recycle. For example, when we asked them what items went where or if they knew who the recycling provider was, the knowledge score decreased by about 1.5 points for at home versus on campus. And we also found an interesting correlation that said that the longer that someone had lived in Indianapolis, the less likely they were to recycle at home. So knowing all of that, at-home behavior translates into behavior elsewhere, and we are really supportive of a curbside initiative, even though it will not directly benefit our campus. We will see massive indirect benefits from this, so we're thankful that the city has allowed us to speak, and looking forward to the progress that might occur. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Mackenzie Beveridge. I am the Sustainability Coordinator at Butler University, but here representing myself. Jessica and I talked about this last week, and we thought we would kind of add on each other's comments, since we both have very similar experiences in that we're in the role of educating our students. But first I want to say a little tidbit. Everyone seemed to gasp when Jesse talked about all of the junk mail that we get. If you have a smartphone, you can download Paper Karma. You just take a picture of your junk mail and it will remove you from the list. Very easy, very easy.
Maybe the best public comment of the night.
Sometimes I get re-added to lists and Paper Karma is what it's called. So if you have a smartphone, download that, and then you don't have to make 25 or 40 or whatever different calls. So, little side note, but Just to add to Jessica's comments, when I started at Butler, we also had a very low recycling rate, and in order to assess what was actually going into our waste stream, we did a trash audit, which is extremely disgusting. I'm just gonna tell you that right now. We looked through the contents of 2 dumpsters worth of trash, and I actually had a bunch of students in a class help me with this, and they resented me forever. But we discovered that the percentage of recyclables that were in the trash was a little bit lower than the state percentage. It's actually 33%, and then 33% was food waste, and then the rest was trash or other. Other meaning we found a bunch of clothes in the trash. We found 40 pounds of clothes just in a bag in the trash, so we donated them. So this gave us an idea of how to address the education on campus. And so we surveyed students, because we also do have recycling bins on campus. We surveyed students to see what their knowledge was, whether or not they do want to recycle, what issues there are if they want to, but they feel like they can't. And the #1 responses were that they felt like they didn't know where the bins were, or they didn't have adequate access, and they also were confused about what to recycle. So we did a few different things. We created signs that have both words and pictures on them. We moved, that's actually critical, the research says. We moved bins around the buildings so that there was always a trash and a recycling bin together. These are all very low-cost things. I did this with 0 budget. And then we also moved to single-stream recycling. So we used to separate our paper out, and then we decided to combine it. And we had a couple of informational sessions that students led, and went to Greek houses and spoke about what you can and can't recycle. Trash audit the following year, after we implemented these things, we saw a 40% decrease in the amount of recyclables in the trash in just 1 year. And so I want to emphasize, this comment is really just to emphasize the importance of education. Our survey results showed us that people really, really want to recycle. I think only 1% we had about 8% of our students on campus respond, and only 1 person said that they didn't want to recycle. So people really want to. It's about educating them how to recycle and then giving them access to it. So that's all my comment is, but be sure to download Paper Karma.
Thank you. So it's very close to 6, so let's make these our last 2 public comments.
Anyone else want to go? Okay.
And then we'll make sure that you have our contact information, and you can submit your comments to us via email, because we do want to compile them.
Okay, thank you. My name is Randolph Russell, and I've been interested in recycling for a very, very long time. Going back to my days as a student in Madison, Wisconsin, the city of Madison did a very innovative thing way back when newspapers used to be big and bulky, and there was a lot of newsprint to be recycled. The city welded some baskets underneath garbage trucks, and they got cooperation from the residents, and people would bundle up their newspapers and put them out with their trash. And the trash people would pick up the trash and then throw the newspapers underneath the truck. At the landfill, they had a semi-trailer that they would just throw the newsprint into. And after a few months, the city was generating quite a bit of profit from the selling of newsprint. It lowered their landfill costs at the same time. So, it doesn't have to be really, really elegant. Another thing about recycling is that it does provide employment for a very low-skill workforce. If you ever go into the third world, you'll see that materials are sought after. Bottles and cans especially are picked up because they are worth money to people that are living on the edge of poverty. So it's very, very important. I think one thing that I'm really happy about with Mayor Hogsett, I want to thank him for putting the Covanta on hold, is I had an experience when I was in Columbus, Ohio, where we had a incinerator plant. And we would call that in Columbus the cash burning power plant, because it took trash and tried to generate energy. They were always having equipment failures, engineers and consulting firms who are always coming in trying to get this equipment up and running, because as bad as burning coal is, it's probably worse to burn trash because it's such a nasty kind of material that doesn't handle as easily as coal. So there's just lots of stuff going on out here, and I want to think that we need to, I think, ultimately get to education. That's the bottom line, is if we're going to recycle, people that put stuff into recycling need to know how you're adding value by recycling. And the way you add value is to have a high quality, uniform kind of product, not just a mixture of garbage. And so education ought to be a very, very important part of doing this. As Jesse was saying, we need to worry about toxic kinds of waste. Well, what's toxic? How do we know? I mean, do you know that the fluorescent light bulbs are toxic? Well, how do you know that? Why doesn't everybody know that? You know, so we need to let people know and educate people in a very meaningful way. So I think that ought to be one of the major thrusts of any recycling program, education.
Thank you.
I promise to keep this brief. Carrie knows, and a few others know, that I can talk at great length about zero waste. And I'm very excited to hear the NAACP representative mention zero waste. That goes right to my heart. My name is Scott Lataka, and I am the Facilities and Sustainability Director for Piazza Produce here in Indianapolis. Piazza Produce is the first certified zero waste business in the state of Indiana. Thank you. I'm also currently serve as a board member of the U.S. Zero Waste Business Council out of California, but the momentum for zero waste is actually growing right here in Indiana and the Midwest. So if this is a great opportunity, the city and its residents, colleges, universities, businesses have been given a great opportunity to do it right from the start. And we've got the tools, the resources right here in this room. And I'll be speaking in June at the IRC annual conference on zero waste. Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't want to be impudent, but I just have to ask, what about the businesses? I've been looking at their waste baskets, and it's horrifying. Because, you know, surely some people must know what the difference is. I mean, when you got all these plastic containers, and in churches too, and that's really a heartbreaker. That's all.
Thank you. And thank you all. This has been outstanding. And as the mayor said, it's only the beginning of a conversation. So if you didn't have an opportunity to speak tonight, please send us your comments. Recycling@indy.gov. We're going to spend the next few weeks compiling what we've learned tonight, revisiting conversations with some of our presenters. If you send us your contact information, we can keep you abreast of when we're going to gather again. And as Carrie and I were talking, this is the first in what we believe will be a series of very public opportunities to give input and to get feedback. And so the next one, it seems very likely, will be around the IRC statewide conference to capitalize on just the brain power that will be in our city over the course of that conference. It would be silly for us not to have a public forum around that time. So we'll work on the details of that and then what comes next after that. But I really appreciate all of your willingness to share your thoughts, your ideas, your comments, and just know that, I think it's obvious, we have no preconceived notion about what this is going to look like when we're done, what the program is going to look like. But we still want to exhaust all of our options and aim for what's possible. So thank you very much again for coming tonight. Stick around and visit the tables on your way out, and then contact us with your continued feedback and ways that we can get back in touch with you. And we'll see you in a few weeks. Thank you.